To fall in love with you, I long, you long, we long to be swayed. Shot a gallon, the gallon of lead went straight to my head. Yes, it did.
Yes. I'm filming at the moment here. Somebody's filming me. Yeah, what has drawn me into making hats? I think it was pretty much driven by music and the images that I saw as a young man and later when I came to London. But I remember when I was performing live, I used to wear a very, very big fur hat. And wearing this hat, I just became a persona, attracted attention, and I liked that, because it sort of makes life easier a little bit as a performer. And then when the performance was over, I put the hat down, and in a way I missed having this thing on my head. And I started buying hats and tweaking them, and they were never big enough, they were never the kind of hats I wanted, and so I eventually decided to make them myself. That got me into hat making, really. It was about 10 years ago.
So what did you have for breakfast this morning?
For breakfast this morning, I had a cup of coffee and a cigarette. Don't do this at home, children. When you look at this, it looks all like sort of, stones and mud. And then you notice different colours and shapes. So that's a little bit of Victorian pottery, not worth putting up, so I'm going to put it back in its rivery home. But the closer you look, the more you realise that that is what the foreshore is made out of. So what you're doing is looking for shapes that are man-made, slightly different. You're looking for colours, the colour of a piece of pottery, whatever you can find, and we're only looking on the surface. We never ever dig. So this is beach combing on a London beach. See, so all grey, grey, grey. Keep your eyes peeled for the blue and white. I always wear my jewellery when I'm mudlarking because I sort of hope it attracts it. And there is a little bit of willow pattern. Victorian willow pattern. There's a little pagoda. Always one of my favourite things to find, and that will be a lovely bit of jewellery. I mean, that could be a brooch. No, that's very nice. Pleased with that. The things that define my work are love of history, love of colour, and perhaps a sense of cheerfulness. I didn't become an artist till late in life. I was in my 50s. I'd been a writer, I'd been a broadcaster, I'd spent my whole life looking at objects, and suddenly, in my 50s, from nowhere, I decided I wanted to make them.
This is my home in India, and it's very childish, but I still like it. I like it now a lot. A couple of years back, I went to Cornwall on a holiday, and I was talking to an artist in an art gallery. She asked me, "Where are you from?" For a moment, I paused. I was like, am I supposed to say I come from London, or I'm where I was born and raised? So first sentence came out of my mouth was, I belong to India, but I live in London. And she was impressed. She suddenly stopped me there and she said, I love the way you said you belong to India. That word belonging has shaped my artistic journey. My cultural identity is my artistic identity also.
So my mum went to art school and she studied painting, and she also had the opportunity to do lettering and printing and quite a range of other crafts. And then my dad, who was an architect, got a job in India, and Mum went with Dad to India. While she was in India, went to the bazaar and saw people block printing just out in the open, and she thought, wow, that's amazing. And when she got back to London, they lived in a small modern house that my dad had designed, and Mum found the walls were being scribbled on and she wanted to make them look a bit nicer and a bit more homely. So she remembered the block printing in the bazaar and she thought, well, I could have a go at that. So she cut herself a lino block and she went and bought some lining paper and she set about printing with that lino block on the floor. And actually we have the original lino block that she carved behind you on the wall.
You told me something off camera when your friends asked you what's going to happen with the printer after you're gone.
I'm glad you reminded me of that. It's quite a funny thing, but a lot of people would like my press, and because it is a really wonderful press. But also, my friend said to me, "Well, what will you do with it when you die?" And I said, "Nothing. It's coming with me." So I intend to take it with me when I go. It's sort of a joke, but sort of not. So. Because I don't think I can really be separated from it. When I brought this press back from the United States, I had a very good friend who said to me, because I brought all the type as well, he said, "But Sheena, you could fit all of that onto one floppy disk." That's what we were using at the time. And I wept and I said, "But it wouldn't be the same, and you don't understand," which is why I brought back an entire shipping container with a printing press and 450 cases of type.
I mean, very often I come up here and I just start sculpturing something, or I found an object. Could be this or this thing, which is probably a piece of a washing machine, and then I start molding around it and shaping it. So that's when I'm the artist. But obviously I have commissions, and that's a more traditional process. And that would usually start with taking the raw material. So you need to make it malleable. And in order to do that, you put steam in it. As I said, this is a long process. Stiffening and getting it ready to block. And it's really funny because when I started out, nobody would tell you how to stiffen a hat. And when I went to see the few factories that are left, and when it came to the question, how do you stiffen your hat, it's just total silence. They will not tell you, basically. You can now decide with the blocking how high you want, if you want a really high crown, and then hopefully you get the result you wanted. But sometimes you get something totally different by a mistake, and then you enhance the mistake, and then you have something very unique. We're just doing a very conventional hat with just a crown and a brim. No, nothing fancy. Well, maybe. Let's see. Famous last words. And if it's not going to be perfect, then it's going to be an artisan piece that is not perfect. I mean, people have a lot of tools to do this. I use very little. I find that even those can be replaced with something else, with a piece of wood. So these are called hat blocks. They're expensive. They're made particularly for hat makers. So I'm blocking it now, which is it's my favorite part, actually. So you do this. And then you take it off. And then you iron around it. You have this, the basic shape. And now the next challenge is to get the brim as smooth as possible. It's a very simple tool that probably hasn't changed in 300 years. If you want a really clean cut here, this helps a lot. So you have it's called a rounding jack. The rounding jack's been around for many 100 years as well. You say, I want a 3-inch brim, and if there was a blade in there, it will cut exactly a perfect circle. you would probably put more stiffener, and then eventually you get a hat. As I said, this is really raw, and it will go back in the box to become something different. So you can reshape these all the time and change your mind, and so it's the endless possibilities, really.
Welcome to my home. A lot of people would hate to live in my house. If you were a very tidy person, it would make you come out in hives. But for me, objects are the inspiration. I make a really broad range of stuff, from great big sculptures to small pieces of jewellery. So I use a huge variety of things. Typically, the things I use are found. So I can't leave the house without looking on the ground or going on the river and picking up a piece of pottery. So a lot of things are genuinely found in the street, found on the foreshore. And in terms of tools, a huge variety. I make things in clay, I make things in wire, I make things in wood, I make things in pottery. So I have a whole range of different things, and I work with my husband as well, who's very good at cutting in straight lines. I think we live in quite a dark world, and basically we all need a laugh. I think objects should bring you pleasure, make you happy, make you smile when you get up, and hopefully make other people smile too. So humour's really important to me. Where would life be without humour? Our house is full of collections. This is our rude food collection. So wherever we went around the world, we'd look out for odd food. So bog, that's ham from Norway. Maldshitto, that was actually a local one. That's Ghanaian sauce. Anything with a funny name. And friends collected stuff for us from around the world, and everybody loves it. I could have the Mona Lisa on the wall and nobody'd look, because they go, look, spotted dick. So we ended up as well making our rude food tea towel, and this has gone round the world. People love it, and I will be having these at Brentford Mile. Bit of rude food for all your mates.
The reason I love this question is it's the question I always ask my students to answer when I'm looking at their work. I say, what do you want people to be thinking about or doing when they leave your work? I would hope that I've been able to interest people in thinking about language. I would hope that I had intrigued them about the history of printing. And I would hope that I had brought them some joy, because printing is a very joyful process. The Tiny Press is named after my dog Tiny. That's the first thing. And it's also quite small. It's smaller than my other studio space, which I had in East London for nearly 20 years. There's also a writer about printing called John Ryder. He ran a press in Richmond called the Miniature Press. So I thought it was a nice nod toward, the histories of printing in the area. I'm a book designer, so if I'm designing a book, then the initial ideas will come in the form of conversations with the clients, and then developing thumbnail sketches, developing pages, page layouts and typeface choices, grid systems, organisation of that. Obviously working very closely with printers who often will be external print, well, almost always will be an external printer, unless you are working on a fully letterpress book, which is an entirely different process. You have to think about how it folds on the sheets. You have to think about how many pages you can print at the same time. And that can be tricky, because when you have type that's very old, oftentimes you'll be missing letters, because you'll find yourself without an E or without a K. That happens to everybody. One of the main things is you can only work with the materials that you have at hand. I have about 60 to 70 full type cases of just wooden type alone, and each one of those typefaces is maybe 100, 150 years old. Paper, incredibly important. The paper has to be something that carries the ink, carries the impression of the type. I never like to overprint. I was taught by printers who worked for many years in the industry that a good printer will always kiss the surface of the paper with the type and with the ink. They will never seek to show off the fact that it's letterpress. Many of my inks are over 80 years old because they were given to me by somebody in New Jersey who used to print for the Dixon pencil mills, and he had all of the ink colours for the pencil advertisements that he used to print back in the 50s and 60s. And every time I put some of that ink on my press, I think about how old it is. But with every single thing in here, I could also tell you the story of everything that I'm working with, right down to the sheets of paper that were given to me by the nuns at a convent in New Jersey, because they liked me and they just gave me all their handmade paper when I bought some type from them. And when I use that, I'm reminded of them and the conversations I had with them. So it goes on and on and on. So every single thing is meaningful, really meaningful.
Some of my paintings, especially like this one, the longer one, landscape view, I like to see them on my lamp. So I got them printed for on the fabric, which is good for the lampshades, and then made this lampshade, which goes matching with the painting. It's been 19 years that we are in London, and my husband and myself, we both are in IT. We came here on job, and I slowly progressed and grew into the culture in London, and I have seen that I'm able to mix both the cultures together. I'm still working on it. I wanted to finish this. I did this, but this is not going well, so I'll do something else here. This is near the Waterman's Park.
Okay, Brentford.
Yeah, it's in Brentford. And this is, I'm not sure if you could recognize, this is Eiselwald, a sketchbook you can say, and then I'll create a proper artwork for that. If I had described my art in one word, I always say belonging. So belonging, inclusion, community, people, places. And that's what I try to show in this collection of Ganesha, where I'm trying to place Ganesha at different places, mixing the cultures, and how Ganesha is embracing the beauty of that particular place. How people come to the high street wearing different cultural outfits. I usually go in sari everywhere, so I always feel inspired or excited about including, like, for example, a lady wearing in a sari but sitting in a pub. So a whole picture is a combination of every small little things coming from different places, but we together make it as a community. I love historic buildings, and there is a Eiselwald Appreciation Facebook page, and I see many people put the pictures of local areas, pubs especially, I have noticed. They bring so many topics of conversation around that one picture of pub. This is a place which brings the people together. As the time is changing, so many pubs have closed, and I really felt that I should capture them in my collection before any of them, goes out of our life.
So I'm Martha's daughter, and so obviously I grew up with her working all around me, and when she started out, she had blocks that she stood on, and it was always very, very precarious, and she was always very frustrated by the results, but she always said the only thing to do is to keep going, and I suppose I absorbed some of that attitude to it, that it would be a very imperfect process, but the joy and the beauty of the hand printing is that it incorporates all of those inaccuracies in the run of wallpaper, and when it's on the wall, the coverage on the wall immediately absorbs all those imperfections. And I suppose when I took up the printing, I was able to take on that acceptance of imperfection and keep going. But I came to join her in the business much later. My children had grown up, coincided with a time when my mum had received a very big order for a commercial project in Chiswick High Road for Soho House. She needed help, she'd had a hip replaced, and so I started working with her to print that paper. And then I realised what an incredible magical thing it is and what a treasure trove her archive of designs are. And we printed for a long time together, and then gradually I took over the printing as she got older and more frail. I think at that moment to myself I committed to making sure that it kept going. What has been very wonderful for me is being able to pick up her extensive archives of designs. There's about 40 current designs which we are still printing and finding different ways to produce. Well, I'm going to describe the current hand printing process, which is using this very old press. We start with the hand carved lino blocks, and I think that inevitably brings a liveliness to the image. You mount the block onto the printing press. We would receive an order with a colour to match, and then we mix the ink by eye. Mixing the colour is one of the most difficult parts of it, because although you can keep a recipe, every time you mix it, it's slightly different. You roll the ink onto the lino block and you pull the paper through on the other block, roll the roller back to its starting position and roll it over the inked up block and down onto the paper.
So I'm checking in. Follow me. Here we are. More studios to the right. And I'm up here. So you can't really fall down. Some people don't come up here because they're worried they wouldn't be able to come down, and I hold them hostage forever. You wouldn't want your camera on there maybe. But no, seriously, like some hat cases, for example, they're really hard to maneuver through this staircase. So I pull them up on here. This is the courtyard of Johnson's Island. But all this was built in the 90s, purpose-built for being studios, basically. So, I mean, you look at it and you think it's something from 1890 or early 1900. But I think it's amazing to have this in the middle of all gentrification and all that, and having this is going to be really interesting, I think. Life moves on and areas move on, and you either move on as well, or you sit it out and see what happens. So it'd be quite interesting to see how this will interface and intertwine with the locals, the new locals.
Long, you long, we long to be swayed. Shot a gallon. The gallon of lead went straight to my head. Yes, it did.
I should have said, I think the Riverside at Brentford's one of the most beautiful riversides I know. I actually really love that it's ever so slightly bleak and has remnants of its industrial history. I find that fascinating about it because I'm interested in old machinery. And so when I walk by the abandoned boat at the end, near the end of the Waterman's Park, for me that's really beautiful because it has layers of history. One of the reasons I love this stretch of the river is because it's slightly unloved and slightly forgotten. It's not the same as walking around in Richmond. People don't really pay it that much attention, and I think that the story it tells is of these amazing histories of Brunel, who built the Brentford dock, the great history of engineering, of transportation of goods along the river and the canals, and it would tell us about those things if only we would give it a chance and pay it some attention.
So the River Thames runs through my heart and soul. I grew up at Strand-on-the-Green, where you wake up in the morning and there it is, and it pours with rain and there it is, and the sun shines and there it is, and the tide goes up and down. It always changes. It always smells fantastic. Every day it's different, and well, it's just an extraordinary thing. And it's so huge and it's so alive. And I cycle now from Chiswick to Brentford, and I'm always straining to see what's going on, and the islands and the mud. Oh, my days, the mud.
One of my absolute favourite things to make are these mudlark mirrors, which tell the whole history of the Thames, from this, which is a fossilised shark's tooth. It's 50 million years old, to this, my most recent find and my favourite find this year. It's a clipper lighter celebrating trans power. I mean, how 2025 is that? And this mirror, it tells what you ate, what you drank, what you smoked, and the whole diversity of the peoples who live in London. And perhaps my favourite find is this. Now, it looks old, it's not old. This is a new thing. It's a little arm, and it's actually the arm of a Ganesh, the elephant-headed, multi-armed Hindu god. And we kept on finding all these little Hindu bits on the river, didn't know why they were there. I did some research and I discovered that in the 1970s, the Thames was officially declared a sacred river for the Hindu population of London. Here we are, centuries on, another generation of Londoners are doing much the same thing, performing their religious ceremonies in the Thames. And what a joy is that. That is the diversity of London, the pleasure of London, as expressed in objects found on the Thames.
So when I first came to this place, this is Hounslow was the area that was, I stayed at that place. My daughter was very young, I wasn't working, and I always used to love art and painting. I got to know about this class which goes on, like you can walk in, and it's in Feltham Art Centre. Then I came across various artists in Richmond, in Brentford, and until I participated in Creative Mile, I didn't know Brentford is such a place full of so many artists.
So what I like about Creative Mile Brentford is the fact that it's about community, connecting the people, connecting the artists. I was quite surprised at how many creative people are in this stretch. Because people know very little about hats. There aren't any hat factories left. Okay, there are a few artisans like myself, they still do exist. But it's just bringing this to the community, the art of being ridiculous or incredibly glamorous or whatever you want to call it. I kind of like that.
I really appreciate how people get to see and to understand the process behind the creation of all of these fabrics and wallpapers. And it's an opportunity for me to show my mum's beautiful designs, but also the graft and the commitment and the difficulty and the technical setbacks which are involved in getting to a place like that. The local neighbourhood and community have taken us to their hearts, and that's very lovely. And it's always lovely to see people's feedback and to see their eyes light up when they see the press operating and how magical printing is. My mum is always very thrilled to see that people realise this is something that they too could do if they just went for it.
My favourite thing is when the kids come and I can help them make a print, and for the first time then they see the power of printing something that goes from, you know, just words which are backwards to a print which is forwards.
As a maker, I think it's important that we supply entertainment as well and encourage people to make themselves. So often art galleries can have a slightly snotty sort of appearance, and you feel you have to ring a doorbell and be a person of, you know, with wealth and whatever to go and look at things. The joy of Brentford Creative Mile is that you get to go into people's homes, you get to go into little galleries. It's properly art for everybody. It's true, I mean, it was everybody, wasn't it? It was a real mixture. And their dogs. It's always dogs. For most of the time, you know, we're looking over the Thames. And when you go down on the foreshore, it's completely different, because you realise that what looks like a whole load of mud and stones, that within that there's objects lost and dropped by generations of Londoners, people just like us. And so the Thames, I think it links us all together with each other, but it also links us with the past.